Hi, I'm Jimmy Colefax, and this is The Story. Our guest today is John Reifler, husband of our guest last time, Honi Reifler, and together they're the founders of the Sherwood Christian Rehab Centre near Coffs Harbour. Before the break, John shared how he gave his life to the Lord after he nearly drowned while swimming. Now he shares what happened next in his life.
And then we went to the Royal Easter Show in 1969. That was a week after, or 2 weeks after my incident. And there was a stand, like a stand that says Catholic Missions, Mechanics Wanted. And I said to my friend, let's go to New Guinea. We'll go and help them. He said, what do you want to go to New Guinea for? And I said, you know, God saved my life. He says, I better put in an appearance somewhere. I owe him one. And he said, okay. So we went for an interview. And we applied, and we had to go to this monastery. And I'd never been to a monastery before, and I saw this big sign outside. It said, pull cord for a bell, you know. Mm-hmm. And there was a 100-foot-long hallway, and you could see the rope going along the hallway, and it went round the corner. So I yanked on this big rope till I could hear the bell. And then this monk comes out, dressed with a brown hood and a white rope around his stomach. Mm-hmm. And I said to my friend said, man, they're Catholics, forget it, they're Catholics. And I said, listen, who cares? God is God, let's go. And so we applied, we got accepted to go there, and we ended up, I quit my job, he quit his job, and we hopped in the car and we were going to go to Darwin. Mm-hmm. We got to Coffs Harbour, we met some Swiss people, and he's a farmer, banana farmer, and he said, look, do you boys want to help me build a shed for a week? And I said, yeah, okay, we'll do it. So we're trying to build this shed, and we have to put a big beam up. The centre beam for the shed was about 6 metres long, and the farmer stood on a 44-gallon drum on one end, and we stood on the back of the Land Rover on the other end of the log, and we both lifted up that log, and the farmer yelled out, back a bit. We had to go back about another foot because we were too close to the wall. Mm-hmm. And my friend stepped into fresh air. He stepped off the back of the Land Rover, and I couldn't hold the weight, and the beam came down crashing. The farmer fell off the 44-gallon drum. I stayed on the Land Rover, but the log hit my friend and squashed him.
Oh, wow.
So we turned blue almost instantly. So we put him in the car and took him straight to Coffs Harbour Hospital, and there they had an emergency operation. They opened up his stomach, pulled everything out, put it all back. He had very little internal injuries, and we were stuck there then for 3-4 months because he couldn't move. He had a 16-inch big scar on his stomach. Mm. And that was my experience. And then the farmer comes and says, tomorrow we go to church. And I said, no, I got my own religion. I said, forget it. And he comes really close up to my face with his nose right up to my face, and he said, listen, son, you sleeping in my bed, you eating my food, you're coming to my church. Hmm. And I got the message. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we went to church. And that Sunday morning, there was a preacher there, I don't know who he was, but he gave an invitation for people to accept Christ. And that was the first time I was in church. And the first time I thought, well, I'll go. And I went forwards and I knowingly committed my life to the Lord, even though I had already an experience before. Mm-hmm. And then, so what happened? I just started working there. We never went to New Guinea. We stayed in Coffs Harbour. I got a job as a private butler. Of course, I then was also a bikie by then. I had a heavy motorbike. I had a black trench coat, a Nazi German helmet, and, you know, that's how I went to bed, and I went to church.
So you were a Christian bikie?
Well, sort of. I didn't, I hardly knew that I actually was a Christian. I just had nothing to do with church before.
Yeah.
But that's what I did. I just rode a bike and followed the bikies around to preach the gospel to them. Mm-hmm. And then the church invited me, the Methodist church invited me to become a member after 12 months because they said, here we go. I said, 12 months. I'd already applied for membership, but they waited and they said, no, look, he's a bit dodgy. He's only here for the girls. Well, they were partially right.
I was going to say, they might have been a bit right there.
They weren't wrong totally, and I didn't tell them that. But that Sunday I became a member. They asked me to come forward. They shared communion with me alone, with the elders. Mm-hmm. And then I went to sit down. And There was only one seat left in the whole church. There was about 250 people there. One seat right in the middle. So I got up there, edged myself into the middle, and I was just about to sit down, and this young woman stands up and shakes my hand, and she said, "Praise the Lord." I shook her hand, and I looked her up and down 2 or 3 times, and I said, "Praise the Lord." Good-looking girl. Anyway, that was on Sunday, and then on Sunday morning, Sunday night, she came to church again. Then I talked to her till 1 o'clock in the morning outside the church, leaning up against her parents' car, and her parents walked home because we were too slow. And then on Monday, I asked her to share her testimony, and I said, because I promised God I will never marry a dud. And what I meant is, Lord, I don't want a church girl. I want a girl that loves you and that is a born-again Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked her, I said, can you share your testimony with me? And she asked, and she says, what is a testimony? And I'm thinking to myself, I got myself a dud. She doesn't know what a testimony is. And then I thought, well, she's good looking, I'll give her another chance. And I said to her, just tell me how you found Jesus. And then she said, that's easy. I found Jesus in Japan when I was trying to be Buddhist and Shintoist. And she had just come back from Japan on Wednesday.
Yeah.
I met her on Sunday, and then I was satisfied on Monday that she was the born-again Christian.
Mm-hmm.
So on Wednesday, I asked her to marry me. I went home and I said, Lord, what do you think about her? And I didn't get a red light, so I asked her to marry me on Wednesday, and she said no. Mm-hmm. And I said, listen, honey, do you belong to the Lord? Are you born again? She said, yes, yes, yes. I said, you can't say no. I said, this is a life-important decision. You need to go and pray about it, and I'll come and see you tomorrow. I said, you need to ask God for the decision, not just you off the head. And so we parted company, and then the next day, I was working on 7 acres of bananas at the time. It was 3 o'clock. I knocked off. I splashed Brute liberally all over, like what it says on the deodorant bottle, and rocked up, and I said, what about it? She looked at me.
You're such a romanticist.
Yeah, and she burst into tears, and I said, oh, great, good. And I said, that's it. So that was in September, and we got married in February. Actually, next week, I'll be married 48 years.
Wow. Fantastic.
6 children and 20 grandchildren.
Of course, the person you're talking about who just came back from Japan was Honi Reifler.
That was Honi.
Yep. And that's how it all began.
And that's how it all began. And then we both resigned our jobs. I was a private butler. She worked as a nurse's aide at the hospital. We bought a combi bus, an old combi bus. I fixed it up, and we were going to go to Europe and introduce my new wife to my parents. So we drove to Perth, and there we were going to ship the car over to India and then go that way. Mm-hmm. But we never got there. We got to Perth, and then God directed us to go to Derby, to the Aboriginal Mission, and there we worked at the Aboriginal Mission for a while. And then I became the pastor of the Aboriginal Church, the Noongar Church. And Honi did her occupational therapy training in Perth. And then before we got married, we both asked the Lord, and I said, Lord, I don't want to mow lawns every Saturday and watch colour telly. I want to spend my life on you. And God gave us a vision, both of us individually, to start a drug rehab, because I was running around every day after work in my combi bus, picking up teenagers, leading them to the Lord, and starting Bible studies and bringing them to church. But I had to palm all these drug addicts off to different families in the church, because I couldn't have anybody at home where I was. Mm-hmm. I was the private butler for a company director, and there was no room in his house to have, those sort of people there. Mm-hmm. And then God gave us a vision to start a drug rehab, and we waited, and we looked everywhere. And so when we got to Perth, we stayed there. I was the pastor there for 5.5 years, and we just prayed, and I said, Lord, take this thing out of my head. If this is not of you, take it out of my head. If it is, can you please show me whether I'm on the right track with this rehab thing. Yeah. And I had breakfast, and I opened my Bible in the Old Testament, and right there it was, when I questioned God, is this of you? Did you tell me to do this rehab or what? And there it was, the man of my purpose from a far country. Surely I have spoken it, surely I will bring it to pass. Go to the east coast, to the coastlands of the sea, and proclaim the name of the Lord. Wow, it nearly blew me away. And then God gave me another word to go to the east coast, to the coastlands of the sea. On the basis of that, we sold our house and we moved to Coffs Harbour.
Well, that was the first part of Eric Scatterbo's conversation with John Reifler, who, along with his wife, Honi Reifler, are the founders of the Sherwood Christian Rehab Centre near Coffs Harbour in New South Wales. Today, John shared the events of his life leading up to the opening of their drug rehab centre. Next time, John will continue his great storytelling of how the land and materials for the centre were miraculously provided. All that and more is coming up next time. Meanwhile, what John shared today about his life reminds me of the story of the prodigal son in the Bible and how the father is overjoyed when his son finally returns home. The father says, "This son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So they began to celebrate. And of course, there was much rejoicing in heaven when John repented and turned his life over to the Lord. And not just for his sake, but also for the many lives that he and Honi have touched over the years. To find out more about John and Honi, you can go to their website, sherwoodcliffs.com.au. That's sherwoodcliffs.com.au. Well, once again, we invite you to join us again next time for more of John Reifler sharing his incredible story. Until then, I'm Jimmy Colefax, encouraging you to share your story with someone today.
Next time on The Story.
We hopped in the car, we thanked them for lunch, we went home, and I'm driving on the highway, and Honi reaches over into my shirt pocket, pulls out the envelope and opens it up. And she looks at it, I could see it was a cheque, and she starts crying. And I thought, women, pregnant, cries all the time. I don't know what's wrong with her now. And I leaned over and I said, "What's the matter now?" And she said, "We're going." I said, "We're going where?" She said, "We're going to Coffs Harbour." I said, "What's that?" She said, "That's $500. And I said, "Not enough."
John Reifler joins us once again to share more of the incredible way God has worked in his and his wife Honi's lives to miraculously help them start the Sherwood Christian Rehab Centre near Coffs Harbour. Countless lives have been touched by this drug rehab centre over the years, and we'll hear more of those stories next time.
The Story. Just another way Vision is connecting faith to life.